Welcome to the January 23rd, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Our chairman's not here tonight, so I'll be filling in, and we're down 2 members, so I'll appoint Jack for filling for Craig and Ray to fill in for Chuck. On the agenda, we've got review of master plan survey questionnaire, and I'm going to,
Do you have that? Okay. Does anyone need a copy? Yeah, I can need a copy. I left mine at home. Thank you, sir.
I got several. I'll defer this portion of the meeting to pass the bill.
So I trust that you've reviewed, looked at it at least somewhat. So maybe if we can just flip through, go page by page, unless there's something on a page, we'll just make a check and say that's a good page and move on. Does that work? So the first page, cover page, is an introduction. Anything on that page that needs to be addressed?
So my question there would be, I know we had some discussion weeks and weeks and weeks ago as to how we were gonna control, or the controls that would be around who actually filled this out. So that, I think the spirit and intent there was that you haven't got somebody that really wants something and they send in 10 copies. And with the kind of last paragraph there of we encourage where residents, property owners, business owners, please share this survey and help us collect as many responses as possible. Is that,
So the way the board, the subcommittee's understanding control is that this, you have to go to whether you're gonna get this in your tax bill and there's a QR code to go to this, or it's posted on our website. But you have to, will need to put in, you have to be a resident of Ware. And it's a one-time deal, it's not a multiple time. So how that will work out with SurveyMonkey, that's,
so that comment is just, hey, make sure you fill out that
Correct.
survey.
right.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
One of the ways we try to mitigate the problem you raised of somebody, like for instance, if 2 adult members of a family both fill it out and they both say they have kids, well then the kids could be double counted. And so that we tried to word the questions in a way that wouldn't matter. That we don't end up dealing with too many things in aggregate, like in that way.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Okay, so respondent profile, page 1, anything there?
Sorry. So are you a resident of Ware? So the third one being a non-resident, are non-residents allowed to respond to the survey?
If they own or operate a business, they could not reside in Ware but still own a business.
So I get so part 2 of that is define operate a business. Because if I live in New Boston and work at the Dollar General in Ware, does that mean I operate a business?
No. You're working there, you don't own the business.
So what would be an example if they operate a business that they don't own?
I think if you lived in New Boston but you owned Country Three Corners.
But that would mean they own a business in there.
Oh, I see. I thought you were distinguishing up here.
Well,
Sure, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so do you, a question 2, do you own or operate a business in Ware? Yes, I own a business in Ware. Yes, I operate a business in Ware but live elsewhere. So if you live in town, you're just gonna check the first one. The second one is to identify people who live out of town who own a business.
so then would you change operate to own?
I think if we scratch the first option and then change the second one to yes, I own / operate.
well,
then you're capturing the residency
The
in the
person,
first one.
the person that owns a business, still, he's getting a tax bill, so he's gonna get it.
Right, but that's not the question. The
Yeah.
question is, how do we, is this
You
clear?
operate
Is
a
question
business.
two clear?
So you're gonna discriminate against the guy that, say, lives in another town and owns, Joe's Hardware.
No, we're asking a secondary
He
question.
owns a business here in Ware and.
Right.
Okay. I operate a business in Ware, but
I don't live
elsewhere. Yeah,
So
that's
we
what I
wanna
mean.
know, we wanna know their primary residence, just like up above, are you a secondary resident?
Right, so to
Yeah.
repeat, I think if we scratch the first option of number 2 and expand option 2 to say, yes, I own/operate, then we will capture the residence in the first one, and, well,
Yeah, so you say it
And then-
here
but
in
then-
in the thing, do you own or operate a business and where?
and then you could even just say, but you just scratch, but live elsewhere, and then primary residence is where, or whatever they fill in.
Yeah, exactly, they could still write in where there,
Yeah,
That
You just
simplifies-
want to establish that they
yeah.
live in where, or not. Live or own a business in where.
Correct.
I think that reduces the complexity of that, while still capturing all the options.
So you make a note of that,
Sure.
okay? Anything else on that page?
I had a note, I don't have this, I don't remember what his main point was, but Mr. Bolton last meeting, I just wrote down how to deal with non-residents.
Yeah, I think I clarified that from 2 meetings ago when we first presented it, because he didn't understand.
yeah, I
Well,
mean,
he had no, let me rephrase that. He understood, but he didn't know why.
Okay.
He wanted to clarify. So we clarified that so that we know, we recognize those who had ownership of a property in town, but it wasn't their primary residence, was his concern. Why do we ask that? And because there were people, like on the lake, there's a lot of people on the lake who don't live in town.
oh, is that,
Or even for that matter, there's
that old campground up there, or what the hell's?
yeah,
Cold Springs.
there's
No, not Cold Springs, the other one that was.
All
All
Seasons.
Seasons, and they don't claim residency because they can't put their kids in school and so forth, but they pay taxes. They're only out of there, a couple months of the year, so.
Right. Plus there's another aspect of our community where there's a lot of land mass that's owned by people from out of state.
Right.
So as an example, there's a 50-acre slot up off of Cram Road or off of Bogue Road between the two that's owned by people from West Virginia. But there's a family member who lives there, but the father owns
Right.
that type of thing, so. Okay. Questions 8 through 12. Anything on that page?
The,
I guess on this age group one, sorry, question 7,
Yep.
why, I mean,
Why so
why so many
fine?
categories, yeah.
Because there were, the first time round, the categories were even larger.
Oh, really?
And so
So
we
this-
didn't have an idea of,
We got like 10-year groups here,
right.
yeah.
Whereas previously it was a bit, almost a 30-year segment. And it wasn't helpful, especially since our demographic has gotten older. Our demographic in 2004, that median age was 34, 35. Now it's up almost to 40. But then there was a host of people who were in that senior citizen component that was a very large spectrum, whereas this will give us a better idea of when.
I think we also, very similar thing, we realized in one of the buckets, you could have somebody with teenagers or grandkids in the same bucket, and they're kind of in different spots.
so I noticed that in this area, there is no, like, what is your employment status?
I don't know that that matters for this, purpose of this, does it?
Well, if they're self-employed, employed, a homemaker, unemployed,
Well, the
maybe a
self-employeds would be in
caregiver, retired, that seemed to me would be a pretty good data point. Because somebody retired might have a little bit different opinion of transportation options or whatever than somebody that would be, I mean, it kind of goes along with age in theory, but, like Pastor Bill said, he's or somebody said, you know, somebody retired at age 60, or I guess it was some other conversation that I had. Somebody at 60 retired versus somebody at 80 that's employed.
Correct.
Slot that in before number 12.
Yeah.
And maybe under full-time employment, part-time employment, self-employed, retired,
Homemaker,
maker.
unemployed, caregiver. That was just off the top of my head.
Okay. Thank you. Transportation?
So just a formatting question, are they gonna do like the, and I assume if they're using Survey Monkey or whatever, it'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they'll specify at one end.
Right, so when you click on that first, it should drop down as to your ranking.
Okay, good,
That's the way we're anticipating it being.
perfect.
And one of the things that was important to us is that there be consistency for 1 through 5 across the board, because there were, one section of the old one had 1 through 4, one was 1 through 3, and one was something else, and there wasn't any consistency. So we're striving to be consistent through the whole process.
And beyond the 1 through 5, always including a don't know option, so that
Yeah.
we're trying to keep people from polluting the data if they don't have an opinion.
We did take into consideration the recent transportation survey that was done by
Hand in hand.
Hand in Hand, and felt there was some things there that were helpful and not helpful. So this is what we could reduce that whole process to. Anything on transportation?
Yeah, 18. How satisfied are you with the current communication from the town regarding transportation?
So, good.
There really is no transportation in town. You talking student buses? What kind of transport?
If you've looked at all of them, that question gets asked pertaining to every
So that,
section. So, obviously, because there isn't any technical transportation, other than what the Boys and Girls Clubs might be providing for the after-school program at the middle school. And I'm not sure if they're at the elementary school or not.
No, they were, last I knew, they were only doing the
Middle school?
middle school, and then they had people coming in to do it at the elementary school, but that depends on if they've got the contract again, because that goes out,
Right.
different people bid on it.
But that's all done on campus
Yeah,
but they do
that has to
provide
do with school, not,
transportation that, because I've seen their buses
yeah.
that come in for specials, so.
I would also say, you know, there's, because transportation, like some of the things we include have to do with the roads, like, for instance, the town, we did communicate about, hey, there'll be paving 114. And so people may have an opinion, did we communicate well enough or not well enough?
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess,
We were looking for consistency because every
Yeah.
other division that follows has a question like that. How well are we communicating? And so if there's nothing to communicate, because there's nothing there, it's obviously gonna show up in the answers to the question. But just for consistency throughout the whole document
okay.
is the reasoning why that's there. And we did it, so one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about pertaining to this particular issue was that all the, I'll use the word freelance opinion from the last document, from the last questionnaire responses, dealt with intersection issues, such as 114 and Concord Stage and Reservoir Drive being accident prone, which historically has been an issue because you can't have line of sight looking south is bad. But even before that, when the convenience store was on the corner,
Yeah. It was even
without
worse.
fail, you'd have an accident at least once a month. We have the same type of problem at the end of Deering Center Road and 77 and 77 at the Ford garage. Or we have a similar type of thing at the corner of Peacock Hill and Deering Center Road on that sharp corner.
Quaker Street and 114.
Quaker Street and 114, it's line of sight.
Yep.
So, some of those issues, we have no control over as a town. We can advise the state pertaining to those things, but we felt that it wasn't helpful for us to be discerning of those things, to make it part of, you know, a blow-up, if you will, to address those fine-tuned issues, because it's being addressed, safety concerns. But,
So we tried to acknowledge that as part of the next part of the process would be taking all the data and saying, okay, 114 is a perfect example of like, this has nothing to do with the town or the master plan. That is a state road. We can try and lean on the state, we can ask for things, but it's something we can't control.
Right.
And so we'll take the data in and realize.
another, yeah,
Some of this
right.
is master plan.
Another example was that, something that came out of the event of, I don't even know what we called it, but when we met at John Stark and we broke out into small groups, et cetera, was how do we address the whole corridor? And how do we work with Goffstown specifically for the traffic backing up off of Elm Street and backing up into Ware or New Boston and et cetera? How do you make that flow better? Because people were saying, you know, what type of relation, and Goffstown wasn't interested in that conversation.
Yeah, the corner, right there, the corner of the back road and
Yeah.
Route 13 where it
Right,
joins. Right
where
there,
those three
by South.
intersections, three roads come together was poor. Or, you know, I almost got hit today because I looked at the Ford garage, I looked down. I'm not going because the guy at the end of Short Road stopped. He sees something I can't see.
Right.
So I waited for that car, and as soon as I looked, he's gone. This guy's turning left in front of me, so I proceeded out. Well, I looked, but this car came barreling down 114, because they don't slow,
No, they don't.
you know, they're still going 50, you know, and thankfully they honked their horn and I stopped and they were able to go by. But if I had gunned it at that point, I would have been T-boned. But those are those safety concerns that, you know, how can you address that? Because you're creeping up, and,
And yeah, it's not a great intersection because
No,
you
it's-
got to pull
it's very-
uphill to the stop,
yeah.
to even get
yeah,
out.
when I'm
It's
on my
still-
motorcycle, I don't even turn left anymore, I turn right. I'm not, because I already dumped the bike once.
Up
trying
Short
to
Street,
go-
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go up Short Street that way, and you can see that it's, I don't know. Okay, anything else on transportation? Bruce? Okay. Community facilities and services.
So, on this one, do you think don't know would, or maybe you want a don't know but a don't use? Because like, school system, I don't use it. Library, I don't use it.
Yeah, well, that would be the don't know.
Okay. And one topic that, do we want to include in there is internet? Because every town seems to have discussions around internet these days.
It's interesting.
And I don't know where's,
So that's community access to multimedia. So maybe we need to put as
yeah, multimedia/internet?
Yeah.
Because I didn't pick that up
in
as,
the,
Well, I think that would be the first one that, like, these are all services and facilities that the town directly provides. If we got into internet or phone or even, I guess, electricity, like propane service, like, those are services. Some of them are, like, like with our Comcast agreement, and some of the laws binding the telcos, those do end up being a little bit more private-public, but,
I suspect if it's a 10-year plan, at some point, most communities now are actually talking about providing internet town-wide, almost.
Well, there's supposed to be money, and we'll see, and according to the way they say for broadband, but the thing is,
Exactly.
you'll never see it unless they give more money, because they'll chew it all up just in the planning.
Oh, yeah.
And try it, so, and they've already know that, so it's a catch-22 at this point.
Yeah.
plus the variety of options that are provided privately
Yep.
can't compete with what you could provide publicly. You know, because there was a time when the only thing you could count on is access through your cable provider.
Right.
Well, now everybody wants to cut the tie. Well, you're not really cutting the tie because your cable provider now provides internet,
Your telephone company.
you know, or your telephone company, right?
Starlink.
Yeah, Starlink or whatever that might be. So, it might be something that.
It was
will-
just a thought.
Yeah, it might be something that will come out of
Yep.
this discussion. Because it all depends on who's gaming in the house. That's all that it matters. Because you don't need a whole lot of internet to do your just run-of-the-mill stuff, but if you're gaming, you know, we've got a whole terabyte of information coming in on.
Yeah, I have
Online.
found since my stepkids have moved on,
Yeah,
that the internet access at times, just to do simple things, is a lot quicker and a lot better than, how come we don't get the service? How come we can't get on? When
right,
somebody's doing everything else, it's
yeah.
like first come, first serve.
Right.
Who got there first?
Okay, anything on that? No. Land use and growth management.
So on bullet point 2 and 23, put a cap on the number of residential permits allowed each year. Is that for new construction, or if I want to put up a shed, or,
Usually it's for living units.
sorry?
Yeah, it's
Probably.
residential, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
residential.
for,
good distinction there.
yeah, new construction.
You want to put new construction or living units? Usually it's living units. If somebody's adding an apartment, that's a living unit, that would be subject to the growth restriction.
Right,
I think living units would be,
So scratch residential and put living unit, building permits?
Yeah,
living unit, building permits.
Yeah.
That works.
And then down,
putting up a shed or a garage doesn't
doesn't count.
count.
yeah, well, that's where that's why I asked, right? Down toward the bottom where it says purchase open space with town funds if taxes are raised, or purchase open space with town funds if taxes are not raised. Could we just change that to purchase open space with town funds? Because if it required a tax, wouldn't that be like a warrant or something?
Yeah, but if people are going to vote different than if you don't need to raise taxes to do it, as opposed to having to raise taxes to do it.
Well, and that to me is where, if you just say purchase space with town funds, there's no discussion around that. If you say if taxes are raised, there's no discussion.
Yeah, but you're going to get two different answers.
Yeah, that's why we split it out.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to split it out.
The old one, if I remember right, the old one only had it if taxes are raised, and so we tried to swing that into
Yeah.
provide both options rather than.
I've got another whole bullet point I think we could think about is transferable development rights.
Kind of a broader response, try to make sure that we made sure that if people have the question in front of them, they understand what it means. So is that clear enough that somebody's gonna, say, oh, I think I understand what that means, let me put a
Yeah.
5.
And that's,
Or is there like a?
that was my comment for the last one, require developers to pay impact fees. I don't know what impact fees are.
Well, it's,
We'll get to that.
there was,
And it's tough to make a contractor
right.
pay, or developer pay impact fees. It's a tough thing to.
Transferable development rights is, you let a guy with 20 acres of agricultural land sell his development rights for a development with somebody developing that's less valuable land to get more,
Just ignorantly, like,
to get
why
more,
would he not just sell the land?
well, this way it protects the land. Because that piece of land that he sold the development rights off can never be developed, he sold the development rights, and now you've essentially protected it.
So couldn't it be developed by the person he sold the rights to? They
Only,
have the right to develop it then.
yeah, it has to, you can transfer them though to another piece of land, that's what the idea is, to transfer the development rights from parcel A to parcel B, so you keep parcel A like it is in perpetuity. It's essentially the same as putting a
Conservation easement.
conservation easement or something on it, but you let the developer pay for it instead of the town paying for it with the conservation easement.
Like, I
Well-
like the summary that you're giving, but I wouldn't be able to infer that from transfer.
Just the term transferable
Yeah,
development rights.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a cute little short way of putting it, is the problem. But it is a method of,
yeah.
Well-
Can we make it more generic of a, and maybe address your point at the same time, require developers to pay impact fees? Is there something more broad that captures what you're getting at and makes this more generic of like, allow landowners to,
sell the development rights to private entities instead of just
But
conservation.
why do they do that? It's, you know, if the goal is have conservation and development, but somebody else pay for it, like how can we capture that idea without like using,
And be quick about it, yeah, no, I know.
nothing's coming to me though.
We get time to think about it a little bit, right?
yeah. That's just, so we'll just put a question on that page. Well, just to point to the whole issue of making sure that whoever reads this can understand it. So in the original from 2003 or 4, protect rivers and streams through riparian buffers.
Who understands what that is, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. You know, so the average person in town
No idea.
have no idea. So it's the word's proper buffers is what it should have been, instead of riparian buffers, because it sounds like it's some highfalutin.
Which is what it is, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just a big word to say something simple. And that's why we strove towards not opening ourselves up to be sure that we had some clarity of understanding. But that's those two things. So it's,
And I think if we could come up with a snappy way of saying that and maybe genericize the last one.
Yeah.
You know, if someone doesn't know impact fees, it's,
well, could we put a parentheses, like,
And the problem is, with the impact fees, if you have impact fees, the impact fee has to apply across the board. So if you're having an impact fee based on an addition of a living unit, that anybody that wants to add a living unit has to pay that impact fee. It's not just the developer. If you want to put an ADU on your house, you're gonna have to pay the impact fee. Now, we might be able to make, like, but you don't want to, because people are gonna argue the point, and they're probably right. So anything, any living unit is subject to the impact fee, not just developers.
Right.
So then it sounds like we could just drop that one, because
I think, I think we, how, are you in favor of impact fees would be a more suitable,
but you still have to define what an impact fee is, I think.
Yeah.
So you could say, are you in favor of, what did we use before?
Considering.
So, like new living units,
living unit impact fees are,
well, but like, if we could quickly say, instead of impact fee, something like, development, like building covering the cost of additional people living there, that's way too long, but.
So what if you put it, are you in favor of implementing impact fees?
Yeah, I think
I think
that'd
his
be,
point is like, who knows what an impact fee is outside of this table?
Right.
You might know what an
Well, I
impact fee
was
is, I
being
don't.
polite.
I'm being honest.
and impact fees could vary widely. I mean, all depends what, how far we want to get into it. Do we want to put for roads, for schools, for fire, for police, for parks, or for rec, I mean, you could have 50 different categories of impact fees, and it all adds up into one fee.
I mean, impact fees is, it kind of implies what it is, but
I've seen some towns with simple ones where there's 3 things in it, other towns have 12 things in it.
yeah, so.
Yeah, that's something to think about then. Because that, I mean, this was the original. That's how much it was land use in growth management. I mean, we're expanding tremendously to get
And
a
that was
broader,
just yes, no.
yes, a broader perspective. All right, so that's one page we have to consider. 26 and 27, okay?
So
That's
for,
just the
in, in fear of, I should have worn my Kevlar underwear, would we want to put some questions in here around alternative energy stuff? Since that was a big issue at the last meeting of, you know, should Ware have solar farms, should Ware have wind farms?
That would be under economic development.
Okay. I sit corrected.
Okay, so we're on to housing and zoning. So Chuck had a comment on allow for commercial development and never allow. He said might want a separate question and a separate zone. Not sure exactly what they meant by that, but.
So I don't know if this has to do with that, but in question 28 there, I think point 2, oppose general opposing zoning but open to some restrictions, I think is good. Neutral. I think for 4 and 5, supporting zoning with some limited exceptions would be better than restrictions.
We went around and around on that, I think.
Yeah, we did.
And strongly support zoning with no exceptions. Because I think that fits with variances and what people can do with the zoning board today, right?
Right. So, how does it work if, right now, our zoning map is set?
Right.
So if we wanted to earmark an area that we wanted to develop industrial or commercial zoning, if out of this comes that we need to do something, how does that work? How do we,
The planning board proposes a zoning change, just like any other amendment, zoning amendment we do. The planning board
so it would
can-
be come before the,
It would come before the
Instead-
voters.
And
The
it happened
voters.
last year, that one property,
Right, some people can petition to do that individually, or the planning board can do larger chunks.
Okay.
The same process has to go to town meeting.
Okay.
And I think to Mr. Bolton's point, most of these, we have kind of a pro and a con, and they both allow for sliding scales. I think most of them make sense, except the one he called out. Allow for commercial development in residential areas, never allow. It's sort of, you kind of get the sliding scale naturally of only asking one of those questions. I think he was saying, if I remember right from the table discussion, he was saying, allow for commercial development in residential areas, and then possibly, I don't recall if he was saying, allow for industrial development in residential areas. I don't think it was that, but, you know, there was
No.
some other combination of zones that made sense as another question. And
Yeah, so maybe it's,
striking the never allow. Because some of them you
well,
say,
so maybe there's a need for us to look at, if we're gonna allow commercial development in residential areas as the example, do we then need to look at, can we do residential and commercial? Is the secondary couplet, and then the third couplet would be industrial.
so that would be,
So as an example, we, across from Bolton Field is that empty lot that they came and wanted to put a dog kennel daycare thing there. But they wanted to have housing above, and we said we couldn't because it was zone commercial.
It's not empty anymore.
It's- No, it's still there, right
No,
next,
It's still empty across from the old Woods house. You're thinking
Oh,
further up
I'm
there.
thinking like 3 lots up.
You're thinking of-
Two lots
yeah,
up,
3
yeah,
lots
there's a
up,
house
yeah,
there
I don't
now.
even know how they put that in there, but,
I wouldn't wanna be there.
or as another example, the house right next to Bolton's entrance, that's a commercial zone. And they're trying to sell the back lot, which is 11 acres, but it's commercial zone, so you can't put a house on it unless you go get a variance to change that.
Yeah, part of the problem is, when things were zoned, commercial industrial back when zoning, at the inception of zoning, residential uses were allowed in those zones. They were just removed from those zones like 10 years ago.
Just recently.
So that's why you've got a lot of commercial zone, because people requested, as long as they could still build a house there, they requested the land be zoned commercial because they thought it was worth more.
Oh. Well, it's a similar to, what is it, the Ilsley property that you can't really subdivide because the whole property is commercial.
The front part,
The front, yeah.
about 300 feet in, yeah.
Well, according to the map
that
I looked
look
at,
like?
it's the whole thing. And it's similar to BC Auto, they're, it's got 7 acres, but they're saying you could subdivide that and put a house in behind. But they're not saying that, the Realtor is. You know, and that's always been a little pet peeve of mine. These Realtors make these hopes and dreams for people, and
I'm gonna try to advertise.
no,
it.
now I see, please check with your zoning. Check with the zoning for the community first before you go think you can do X, Y, or Z here. But, so maybe that's the contrast to say, allow residential development in commercial zones and vice versa, never allow residential in commercial zones to add those.
I thought you were proposing, allow for commercial and residential, and then allow for residential and commercial,
Yeah,
but not have a never allow option, because you would say strongly opposed, if you never want it.
Yeah, what the answer is, yeah, because you get the support, oppose, yeah.
But,
well, is it necessary to say it that way in that particular case? Allow for commercial development in residential areas? You're gonna get the the spectrum, so then why ask it the
no,
negative
that's what
way?
I'm saying, I thought you were saying we should have the never allow.
No.
Okay,
I was saying that if we're gonna allow, to answer the, which I think he's asking, the never allow should be changed to
Residential.
allow residential and commercial.
Right.
I agree. But then you had proposed at least another pairing of,
If you then do if we're gonna follow the same thought pattern, allow industrial
I don't know that,
Because,
we have
so,
very limited industrial zone.
what does Clement's old toy factory, is that industrial or just commercial? I don't have a map with me.
I just happen to have.
Yeah.
Because technically, the only industrial place we have is B&B Lane, right?
Pretty much.
Unless we're gonna expand to your,
Just outside of it.
your backyard. We can expand to your backyard.
Yeah,
That other building that just next to it.
So where is it?
The industrial or Clements? Clements is on Concord Stage Road. Across from. Yeah, it's just commercial.
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's just them. It's just that piece of property.
Yeah, that's that warehouse out back there.
Just touchscreen.
The touchpad.
Oh,
Is that the one with the warehouse out in the back?
yeah, it's the red building right on,
Steel, yeah, and somebody was living in the front half too.
there's a house in the back.
Yeah, there's a house and you go,
Rental.
Yeah.
Adams TV rental.
Yeah, I don't know,
That
but
was-
I looked at that property for the church at one point, and the house is not worth.
years ago, it wasn't bad shape, but now it was.
And then I
rentals.
didn't like the building because it wasn't tall enough, it's only like a 12-foot ceiling, and you can't play basketball in there, or volleyball, so we got a better property across the street, we just had to wait.
So in addition to whatever we were just talking about, isn't, the make it easier to construct detached, and that, isn't that all covered by a New Hampshire RSA?
Not,
where are you?
they had,
Number
passed in
one,
the Senate.
the first bullet point on the 29.
That hasn't passed yet. I mean, it passed the House last year, but not the Senate. Right. And, I mean, they're probably gonna try something again this year, who knows? But,
And this is a personal thing, probably, but I don't really like encourage, discourage. Encourage short-term rentals, discourage short-term rentals, encourage affordable housing, discourage affordable housing.
yeah, with the way you've got one strongly opposed, 5 strongly support, I mean, you almost,
I mean,
could
I
combine-
would almost like to rather write it, are you in favor of short-term rentals, strongly favor,
strongly opposed, strongly
disfavor?
support.
Are you in favor of affordable housing developments, strongly oppose?
Yeah, and we ended up here, just the way the question is worded, we're saying by modifying zoning or other regulations, the town of Ware should. So we're saying, you know, given that we are asking you, should we take an action? Should we take an action to encourage something? Discourage something? And so if you, this
Well,
is
could you-
language we struggled with.
Could you say promote affordable housing developments? Strongly in favor or whatever, promote short-term rentals.
And I think why we came to this was we couldn't pick a word that was like dead neutral, because promote is
Yeah.
a positive connotation.
Yeah.
If there were that singular neutral verb, I
Yep.
think that would help.
So if we say promote and everybody's against it, it's gonna be pretty clear.
They'll put number one.
They'll put number one, right?
So you.
Even, or if we just leave encourage as opposed to discourage, or if we say discourage, we're still gonna get the same answer on the other end of the
Yeah, so
spectrum.
eliminate one of the statements.
Right.
So,
Well, if you say, I don't think we should encourage it,
I'd
but I
say-
don't know that we should discourage it, I think that's when you end up with.
Well, I mean, if you end up with a negative answer to it, so you'll get your answer either way, so
We could just put
instead of
the
being.
bullet, short-term rentals, either strongly oppose or strongly support.
That's probably,
Are you in favor of,
No favor, nothing, just short-term rentals, period.
yeah, short-term rentals.
So the
or Airbnb?
intro to
or
the
whatever?
question.
No, are
would
you in
have to
favor, just
change.
short-term rentals?
Well, we have
No.
to go back up, like Salem just said, question, we have to read the beginning of the question.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
By modifying zoning or other regulations, town should what? Encourage, should promote, should
Yeah.
make it harder, make it easier, allow, never allow, increase, decrease.
Yeah, and that's just probably, that, you know, again, that's my own personal, I just encourage, discourage, just,
And maybe to,
Consider,
Yeah, there'd probably be a more neutral.
yeah,
that's more neutral.
yeah.
Now, we're thinking about it, not promoting it or encouraging it or discouraging it.
isn't that a whole nother thing though? You say, should we consider, I'll pick a, well, I guess just to keep hammering the third rail here. Should we
Yeah.
consider solar? Well, yeah, we should consider it, but I have an opinion on where we should end up once we consider it.
Right.
Yeah, but if you say, if you ask me, do you want to consider short-term rentals, and I'm not in favor of short-term rentals, I'm gonna tell you, I'm
No.
gonna circle the,
Strongly
not
disagree.
no, but hell
Right.
no.
Yeah.
But I don't have a place that I would short-term rental, so that's gonna skew my opinion.
Yeah. I want a grandpa pod.
You still have a few other, very few pieces of industrial. Some on Colby Road shows, some up at high school, on the zoning map. Not much, but
Colby Road?
the zoning map. If you go to the, online database. and
Yeah.
Turn the light on for, zoning.
Yeah.
all the colors.
Yeah. Limited on industrial,
There's not a whole lot.
no. And then we have, and commercial for that matter. And then, you know, that comes back to another education piece for the community, to understand that we do have limited on these two things that we're safeguarding. We got more property in conservation than in either of those two
Combined.
combined. You know, so it comes down to how are we accessing or even permitting access to those properties that the town owns, you know? All right, so let's look at those, that wordage right there in the middle for another time. That work? We're not gonna solve it tonight. Economic development. And for that matter, we might wanna stop because we got other things to do too. Anything there?
I think my only question was, is in 32, the second to the last, identifying advanced locations for new commercial and industrial, is that a, my question is that a kind of a proposed change to zoning?
That's what it.
Yeah, that's
sounds
kind of
like.
what we talked about already. How does that work? So if it's something that the community is saying, hey, we need more commercial industrial development, how do we draw people? You know, because, what was it, last time we met, it would be nice to have maybe raise it, from a pharmacy. Well, where are you gonna put it? You know, unless you put it in where, behind Dunkin' Donuts,
There was one there at one time.
yeah.
It
You know,
didn't get the business.
That's
so
the
I
only
mean,
place that you could put it technically,
Yeah.
you know,
I
because,
remember you're part of this conversation at the time, it was like, we can't force anybody to do anything with their land, and so it's, but we
Right.
may be able to work with people and say, hey, you have this huge chunk of land, we know that, you know, is there some way, you know, maybe somebody happens to know somebody,
I mean, the other, just off the top of my head, you know, Mount Williams Pit is gonna not, continue to produce forever. Or there's places in that along the River Road edge that could easily become something different. I don't know. I've always thought that thought. Well, why is that berm there? Well, it's to protect you from seeing everything else, but you take that berm away, there's easy, flat, developable land that you could put some type of industrial type of thing, or manufacturing, or
I'm going to oppose that.
commercial, you know, as long as they have a hologram on looking at it, it's all trees, so that when you look down above it,
Well, it couldn't be worse than the dynamite that goes off in.
yeah, but my point is that there's things like that that are potentially available to expand on or consider. Because otherwise, if we're gonna look at things like you wanna drop your tax base, well, you gotta draw businesses. How are you gonna draw businesses if there's no place for the business to go? Well, then the other option is that we do an assessment of, and I'm not sure if we do this here, I don't think we do, assessment of identifying all the cottage industry that's in town, that people are running out of their homes, and a variety of manufacturing things that are ongoing, but the community's not aware of, and you have the right to do that out of your home. But it's not impacting our bottom line concerning taxes are concerned. It might be a good thing to put a moratorium on storage units. Just talking out loud.
So, under economic development here, is this where we would want to add, do you want solar farms, do you want wind farms?
Yeah, so we could, agricultural businesses, I can't remember what CSA stands for.
Community shared agriculture?
Okay.
Basically, like you buy in a share of a farm and you get vegetables every month.
So one of the things that, in Danny Jean's proposal concerning solar, was to consider if it was gonna be on rural ag, it had to do solar and, kind of like what regenerative farming or regenerative
Regenerative roots.
wanted to do, with solar, and then do a crop. So that kind of falls under agricultural business, if you want to add that under the et cetera, to say solar,
Well,
or
could we
wind,
just add a
or,
renewable energy in here? Would that work?
I think it's more distinct than, because you may say, oh yeah, I'd love to have more syrup shacks, but I don't want to see a wind farm.
Yeah, well,
right.
that's, renewable energy would
Yeah,
cover
so,
wind
no, that's why
farm,
I'm agreeing with you
solar.
there.
So
Yeah.
put a renewable energy such as, and then just,
Yeah, solar, wind, nuclear.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Indiana's getting one?
we really putting nuclear?
No.
No,
Oh, how about water,
hydro,
hydro?
Yeah, hydro.
We once were as the toy capital of New England or the world, that's what made things work. I mean, I got half of a water dam on our property anyways.
When I lived in New Boston, in the dam, there was an old grist mill, and tried to turn it into a,
Is
Power plant, that'd
Glen Lake's hydro still operative in
as far as I know,
which one?
Glen Lake?
yeah,
Yeah,
as far as I know.
yeah,
They're putting a huge substation next door.
yeah, you have to boost everything.
That's got nothing to do with the hydro station, though.
No?
The last bullet on 32 is a question we actually had left ourselves. Man, would you happen to remember, we just went through all the committees and whatnot, does the Ware Economic Development Committee exist still?
It's still on, you're looking for that.
I think so. Okay, so that should read, populate.
Okay.
It's still on yours.
So we're gonna add, remove, reestablish, and then populate, but then we're adding renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro, under the number 33. Okay. So, anything else on economic development? That looks okay, right? Natural resources, open space, and cultural resources.
So that one, the only one that I would suggest is preserve agricultural lands, because who decides what's high quality?
Oh, just take high quality out,
Yeah, high
Prime.
quality prime.
preserve agricultural lands.
You know, you need to leave the word prime there. Because that's basically land classification, that's a classification of prime agricultural land is,
Okay, so take high quality off
yeah.
and leave prime.
And just a question, does greenways mean like what it does in Europe, where you build bridges across roads that are for deer and moose and stuff?
I got a good.
They do that now.
They do in
That's what-
Europe.
That's
They
what
do
those
it here.
signs, that's what those deer crossing signs are
Yeah,
for.
DOT has to put, you have to get special culverts, and instead of having they put a bridge, it ends up with it being a box culvert, and it's got an open bottom.
Yeah, they,
so
well, they
the-
do that a lot up in Canada.
So the turtles can cross,
But you know what happens with those things? The predators figure it out pretty quick and they just hang around the ends and wait for them to
Either
come
end,
walking
and then-
through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like ringing the dinner bell, but
Yeah.
that's, they did that so they can get through.
Yeah, so it was just one of those questions. What-
So the question becomes, do we have wildlife corridors and habitats?
Well, that was kind of my question,
Yeah.
other than watch
almost-
out for deer.
We have
It's almost like
naturally
they
occurring
used-
corridors, we don't have man-made ones.
It's almost like, well, I think there's one up on Route 10 going towards Haverhill, I think, as a farm. They've got a big culvert that you go underneath, they run the cows underneath, or used to run the cows underneath the highway. So there's the corridor to get the animals through.
I guess.
Now, if you
the
can
idea-
educate them to read the signs to go under through them, then you're ahead of the game.
If we knew there was a big, I'll pretend 100-acre subdivision, but they know the moose go right through there, well, okay, if people care, if we have gotten that feedback, no, you have to carve out as part of the conservation land, there has to be this left there. I think, but I think, I forgot who just said it, but we'd have to identify them first.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because
because,
it's not something you can put on a map and say, we're gonna have one here, it doesn't work that way.
no,
They're gonna go where they wanna go anyway.
Right.
yeah.
They may,
That's like that lady who kept hitting a deer and called in the radio station and said, I'm tired of these deer crossing signs. And she was dead serious, and she went on for 10, 15 minutes. She called the police, she called her senator, she called everybody, and finally called the radio station. Next day, she said, I'm sorry, I was mistaken.
Thump the deer, huh?
She
Someone
thought
must
the
have explained
sign
it
was
to
for
her.
the deer,
Yeah.
and the sign wasn't for the deer, the sign was for you.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's hard. I mean, I don't think we have, because we're not developing a, seasonal migration of, maybe I don't know what you call that area, just as you leave town into I call it the causeway before you get up to Page's Corner.
Oh, yeah, the flood control, it's part of the flood
So-
control.
So I was coming home one night, and the place was littered with frogs. I mean, there were hundreds, if not
After the
thousands,
rain.
of frogs on that road. I went by early the next morning, not a lick one was there. All the birds and whatever else took them away.
Scooped them all up.
It was like,
Well,
wow.
I've had that on, after a rain, or during a rainstorm, right on my road, on Quaker
Yeah.
Street, you go up, I said, well, they're all out, the rain drives
So
them
that's the
out
only
the
thing
road.
I can think of as far as causeways or what, not causeway, greenways.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's worth asking.
That's all part of the Hopkinton Dam flood control.
Yeah.
I've never seen a flood in there, I can never remember.
Okay, anything else on that, other than that high-quality thing?
No.
So we're doing pretty good. So this one, this last one, category assessment. Chuck thinks we need to, or suggests we split this out, because it says, please rank the top 5 categories where you think is doing well, and rank the top 5 categories that need improvement. If we divide them, 44 in half, and say, what's the top rank, and then what's the ones we need improvement, as 2 different questions instead of the same one, because otherwise it gets muddy pertaining to how that looks, or how the information's gathered.
Or can you get it so they rank them instead of just like 1 and 5, you know, whatever's the number of ones you have there is just 1 to, was it
Well,
1
couldn't,
to 15 or whatever, it's,
Couldn't-
which
couldn't
is the
you
highest
just-
priority, what you think?
how do you think
you
where
rank 'em?
is doing in the following categories and do 1 to 5, right? So
Well, it
if
is-
they're,
It is two different questions, though. So where do you think you're doing well, and where do we need improvement over 5 years? You could say the same, you could say 1 for both. Say, we're doing well here, but we really need to keep doing well over 5 years.
Right.
Yeah, instead, you know, what you can
So-
do is change the numbering sequence.
Yeah.
So that's what he was saying, we could have 2 number 1s, 2 number 2s, 2
Yeah, that's
number
what I'm thinking.
3s, et cetera,
Exactly, yeah.
in the response that you're,
It's 14
so if we divide it,
14.
we'll get a clearer picture.
I would propose rank the top 5 categories, et cetera, split that into a new 45
Right,
copy-paste.
right. I think if we divide it, we'll solve the problem. Okay, that seem reasonable?
Yes.
7 and 7? Yeah. You got 14 categories divided.
And then the rest is, what do you think, what do you think?
yeah, but do you want to do, or would it be better to do, what do you think is the best thing about living/working in Ware? What do you think is the worst thing about living or working in Ware, rather than what is the best thing about Ware?
The worst thing, yeah.
I would just say living in, because you're supposed to be a resident, but I can see the workers. I mean, 48, I think, is okay.
So I guess the question, that's a totally different question, because this question here is asking us of the overall big picture of what it means to live in Ware, to be in Ware, about the town. Then you have the employment issue is something different, if you wanted to look at it that way.
Yeah, well, I would think the most important thing is living in Ware. But I could go either way.
I think it's the distinction between, if you say the best thing about living in Ware or living and working, it's about what's the best thing about your life in Ware versus what is the best thing about Ware from a top-down planning, master plan perspective. So I think as written, it captures more of that plan question. And then that allows everybody to fill in number 46 and say,
Yeah, I'm not gonna bet on that one.
yeah.
Okay?
I would like to say you guys have done a great job, having had to write surveys and stuff. It's not easy. I think you guys have done a great job of it.
Thank you. So we good on that page?
Yep.
Okay. So looking at this, number 23 and 129 are the only ones that we need to revisit. Right?
There were some edits that we all agreed to.
Correct, yes, but I mean, the open ones we didn't make a decision on.
23, 29.
23 deals with transferable rights.
And I think I still have the Word doc version, and I can make those changes.
Yep. And then the other one was 29, correct wording.
Yeah.
I think we addressed everything else that was brought to our attention
We'll keep it on the agenda then for
next time.
next time.
So if you want to make those changes and get them to us, and then we'll go from there.
Moving on, review and approve capital improvements program, rules, regulations, and bylaws. Everybody have a chance to review those?
I feel bad because we just did a deep dive on this. I have a bunch of stuff for this too. So I guess I want to say that at the beginning. I think it's mostly there. There were a couple of spots. I don't know how much you want to preface it before I start talking.
Go ahead.
The main one that I thought might be helpful, we have this really good multi-page document, and then the bylaws and function is kind of a one-pager. This big document doesn't actually have a name, and where I ended up thinking we could be is delete this entirely, call this the bylaws,
Delete this.
make sure that everything is captured in this one, but then not have two things. So that was kind of thought number one. Because some of it was doubled up, like the members, but duties were not included in this one, where they were included in this one. So just make sure that everything's captured in this and then delete this. Otherwise, I had some minor typo things like commas. I don't know how much you want to go through every single one of those, but, so maybe if I gloss over this right now, and we can come back. In the introduction, there's a statement, the last update, this is referring to the master plan, the last update was completed in 2005 and is scheduled for update every 3 years. But as we talked about in the master plan survey subcommittee, the RSA suggests every 10 years.
That's what the master plan is, right? What's it say for the CIP?
No, but it's referring to the master plan.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got no problem changing up the,
Gotcha.
And then I guess I was gonna ask, if we get past all the kind of, I don't think anybody's gonna object to anything, but there are some kind of bigger changes. If we get past all that, then I'm happy to go through and make all the comma edits, if there's a Word doc version. And send that out, like, there's an extra word, there's a grocer's comma on CIP, rather than like spend everybody's time on it. And we did that in the subcommittee, where it's like, here's the red line version.
Right.
You can see all the edits that were made. And just kind of skimming here, like master plan's not capitalized on another page. Bullet points kind of go back and forth, whether they end in a period or not. And then I ended up with, I guess the first kind of big suggestion had to do with the overview of the CIP process, and we went back and forth a little bit, we had discussed this before, on should it say the planning board, or should it say the CIP committee, and I do think it should say CIP subcommittee throughout, that's another one, since it's not like a sibling of the planning board, it's a subcommittee of the planning board. And so I had kind of jotted down a paragraph I was gonna propose at the beginning of the overview of the CIP process, just to say each year and pick a month, the planning board can elect to form a CIP subcommittee or oversee the CIP process itself. And then if formed, the subcommittee shall include at least, and then that would, I'd actually written all this down, and then I realized it was on the next page where it says voting members, advisory members. And then, because we'd gone back and forth on, do we make this document for the planning board, and then we have to edit it again next year?
yeah, it'd be great if we could
Yeah.
allow for both.
Yeah, so I was trying to
Yeah.
make a paragraph that would fit either one and just say, each year, we're gonna do this. And I guess the one thing that I think that would necessitate is if it was a subcommittee, it would have to be 1-year terms, so that you could say on the next year, no, the planning board wants to take this back.
Yeah,
Otherwise, because otherwise you'd want rolling terms, and how would you ever break that apart?
right.
And I guess, and then a note, the rest of this document will refer to the CIP subcommittee, but each year that might be, and just try and say like, you'll see this language from here on out, but it could be the planning board.
Refers
it
to
could
either
be-
one,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
And then, I guess kind of a consistent inconsistency. There are places where it talks about working with the schools, and then when it comes to how it's actually gonna be done, they kind of drop off. For instance, I would think there should be an advisory member from one or both of the school boards.
We've tried that, they have zero interest.
Well, I think if it's something that we want, if we think should be done, and I think it should be done, because they spend a lot of money, at least say, hey, this is what we'd like to do, and then it's up to them to tell us no. I think it's worth
I mean,
asking.
we could have it included in here, so if they decide they want to participate,
Yeah,
they can.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, we wouldn't want to exclude them, we'd love them to be here.
I think if it just said, and especially knowing if it were in the advisory, like, if you wanna come and advise us, great. If you choose not to, okay. And I don't have a ton of concrete suggestions on how to fix that, but I did see a few spots where it's like, well, we've kind of dialed back in on the town in this section and excluded the schools, where earlier it was talking about.
So
both.
do our schools have a CIP program?
No. No, just the school board does,
Not that I'm aware of.
So they're not looking for, I mean, because the buses are subbed out except for the minibus that they own.
all this stuff is, it's under the school budget, not the,
Doesn't come anything to do with the town. but
Yeah, that's
They're kinda on their own.
gives my question as to how much,
and the only time they ever put a separate warrant article on is if they want an addition to the school or something, I think.
I'm just looking for consistency. I'm not, like, I'd either strike it completely, or if it's of interest of the planning board to include them, then make sure it's actually like,
right. Well, historically, the process they haven't participated for one, but for two, what happens at town meeting is something separate from what's happening with the school, because they have their own school,
They have their own town meeting and.
their own quote-unquote town meeting, you know. Their deliberative session and our deliberative session are two different things, or there's two. There's John Stark and then Ware School District.
But it would be great if they were to come before us and say, look, in 3 years, we're gonna be proposing this. So we'd know to maybe adjust our CIP a little bit.
Or, yeah, or that can be influential in how we're making planning plans. So if they're looking to add onto the school, it's gonna cost X amount of millions of dollars or whatever it might be, then we could be addressing how do we assist in developing or promoting that so that it doesn't impact us negatively. You know, like adding commercial zoning or adding an industrial complex or expanding an industrial area or whatever it might be, or to.
That's been discussed by them on several times, but never really come before us, or came.
Right, right.
Was for Centerwood School. Has been
And we could
talked about.
add, certainly add them as an advisory member.
Yep,
Yeah,
if they wanna participate, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
so I guess I can see keeping them.
but yeah, I would just, and I think, I have enough proposed changes that I think,
And I think I'd make an advisory member from, we got 2 different school
Yeah, each
districts, right?
school.
From
Yep.
each
Yeah.
school district,
Yep.
so it'd be 2, yeah.
yep. So I guess I would ask, since, you know, if everybody could do another read-through of like, okay, maybe the school should fit in here and here if we're gonna do that. Cause I think it'd be great if, you know, it's tough at this board, CIP, whether it's a subcommittee or not, on the board of selectmen, of like, there are big asks every single year. The school dwarfs all of that, and we have no idea what's coming in any given
Right,
year.
exactly.
And, I mean, at the finance committee last night, watching that one, there was one person who rejected the town budget proposal, saying that the school budget was gonna be the school is taking too much money, so the town needs to be the one to cut back. Like, well, come on, like,
Yeah.
come on. So it would be nice if this kind of process existed for those entities. Understanding, yeah, they are not part of the town with a capital T, but it's a service we can offer, and it is all taxpayer money that's coming from the same tax bill.
Plus, don't we operate on 2 different fiscal years too?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Right?
Yeah, they run, July first to June thirtieth.
Right.
You run it like the state does.
Yeah.
The state's fiscal years.
That's what, our church, we
July
go
1st.
July 1 to June 30th.
So I guess keeping going, on page 6, there's a section on tracking, which says, project recommendations are tracked over time by maintaining a spreadsheet of projects. But it doesn't say who maintains that, and I would propose we specifically say that would be the land use coordinator or the land use department. Just so it's not like, and especially if they are year to year on a subcommittee, that might disappear. There are a couple of other references to the land use coordinator and the land use department, so I thought that was a reasonable addition.
Is,
Beth kind of maintains that now, doesn't she?
that's what I was thinking,
Isn't
that
that
shouldn't
kind of
that,
maintains that now,
shouldn't
doesn't
those projects because they're not really land use,
Yeah.
That's fine too, yeah.
they
So-
should fall under the finance department.
Well, if you're talking about like an out-year proposal, I always did it when I was a land use person, and I always did it when we did our
Right.
CIP presentation.
Because it is a planning board function, so it should be the land use land use department.
There was a spreadsheet that says.
Right.
Yeah.
The balance, no, that's a shorter version, but
Yeah, I
the
know.
balance, and then 25, and then you can see 26, 27, 29, and then you look at the bottom and you can see, but it
Yeah.
was always, I started that when I was land use person and carried it through, and then this year got dropped, not on purpose, but, I mean, I could rebuild it fairly quickly, I just skipped this year.
Right.
I still have it.
So it's,
And I think it is land use because it's a part of the planning board thing.
Right.
yeah, so that's,
It's land use.
yeah, okay, so then I guess I would propose the edit. So are tracked over time by a spreadsheet of projects maintained by the land use coordinator.
You could just say department, right?
Sure. Going on down to the meeting schedule, I would ask that since it's June, August, September, October, and then finalizing November, December, I would ask to scratch December, just given when the selectmen are gonna wanna be looking at it in December. And ask that CIP is done by the end of November. But if you think it's unreasonable,
No, because unless we start in May,
We didn't have to start that early.
but generally in December, there's only, as far as this board, we only meet once
Yeah,
often.
but we had it
because-
done in November this year, didn't we?
So what's the,
Yeah.
November 14th, yeah. I
it
think
was
November's
only,
doable.
Yeah.
Because the idea is to have it like, Sam said, you have it done before we roll into budgets.
So, yeah, you could scratch it for
Right.
December.
scratch December then.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, the first paragraph on page 7 is a little odd in that it suddenly switches into the past tense. And so I'll kind of gloss over, but each submitted project was assigned a class, but I think that should be each submitted project must be assigned a class, because it's saying this is what we're going to do as part of the process. Each submitted project must be assigned a class. After each project is classified, projects falling into the same class are reviewed against town needs. I called out at the very bottom of that page, general fund. It's another one where we've kind of drifted back away from including the school in these methods of financing. And it gets a little bit more specific on town, like, it is a similar function for the schools. But that might be an opportunity to make sure they're addressed. And then on page 8, under grants, it says one source of grants is, but then it includes more than one thing, so I didn't write out a proposed edit, but some way of pluralizing that properly. I guess just grants may come from state and federal government.
Yeah, I don't think he's, yeah.
You say typically grants are from state, federal government.
You get it from the state
There you
constantly
go.
when you do bridge work,
Federal government, Homeland Security.
Homeland Security.
Yeah, and, it's just correcting the pluralization
Yeah.
of the source of
You
grants.
say typically grants are,
Yep.
right?
Okay, typically grants are from state and federal. I had already edited in, grants may come from state and federal government. Typically grants come from state and federal government, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then,
I would even, I wouldn't even list who they were, because I mean, could come from anyone from the state or federal government.
Anybody pops up a grant that looks applicable, I guess.
Yeah. Could from,
the next section, the header is impact fees and user fees, but then the description in the paragraph goes user fees and impact fees. So I would suggest we flip the header, is the easiest fix there. So user fees and impact fees.
Yep.
And again, I'm skipping over a bunch of like commas and colons.
Yeah.
In the summary, it looks like this actually came from somewhere else, and I think, if I read it right, it was
Yeah.
from,
Of yours, it should be
Yeah.
our.
yeah, exactly, and there are 3 instances of that, 2 on this page and 1 on the next. And that's it. The big one, I guess the big 2 were making it generic so it can say year by year, planning board or CIP subcommittee, and including the schools or not, we decided on that, and ditching the bylaws.
So was there,
Separate
you
thing.
mentioned there was something on this page that you wanted to be included?
I don't have a line by line, but I think we just need to do a, like, before we delete this, make sure that everything in here was captured.
Okay. Right.
Um,
So we need to do that for homework.
yeah. That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
No,
That was very
that went well.
Do we have a box folder or a Dropbox folder or something where those things show up? Because I haven't seen.
This was a
I
hard
did
copy
a
from the
I
last
made
meeting.
hard copies, but I thought
I did a
emailed it.
search on your email and I didn't find it.
The latest email you sent said, if you want copies, let me know. It went from yesterday or today.
And did you have the Word doc in this, Naomi? Did I have
Did
that?
I what?
Did you have the Word doc in this, or did I have that?
I think I did. That would be easier.
So it's, I guess I have 2 major action items out of this one. Make the edits we talked about to the questionnaire, and make the edits that we talked about to this document.
If I have the Word doc in this, I'll get it to you.
You have that Word document.
Yeah. I can send it to you, I've got it.
And do we wanna
Then-
do,
Then Ray would get one.
yeah. Do we wanna do both of these by the next meeting?
Yeah,
Next
we should,
meeting is 2 weeks from now, so do you wanna,
do we have anything on the agenda?
what's that?
Do we have anything on the agenda?
You get that.
That's a work session, right? That's the first week.
2 weeks from now is a work session.
Yeah, we can do it next meeting.
Well, yes, 2 weeks
I'm
from now
gonna
would
be
be
in
a work
Florida,
session, because
so-
you didn't have any plans. for
Enjoy.
this month.
Yeah.
2 weeks from now that would be a work session, because you didn't have any plans tonight.
Okay, so, yeah, let's move both these to
Both of them, both the questionnaire and to.
the CIP. Yeah. Now we've got minutes.
We had that voluntary merger too, so, or does that come after?
Yep.
After.
Okay.
We've got more than, 1/9, we've got,
You get 6 steps.
So I move we accept the minutes of September 26th, 2024.
I have one edit I'd like. I don't know if you'd like to wait for a
Well,
second
We
then.
can do it during discussion, right?
yeah,
I'll second it.
It lists Janice as ex officio, and I guess I'd just like to, if I could be included in the not present and Janice as ex officio, alternate ex officio.
And then you as
Absent.
absent.
Yes, please.
Oh,
It's the only change I had.
okay.
all in favor of accepting the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
5 ayes. October 10th, I think is next.
Was it October 10th, you said?
Mm.
So
Move we
you
accept-
reverse on the other, like when she's on here, or just leave it? Because you were here.
Yeah, I don't, well, it's not, I didn't look very
You were
closely, but
here,
like,
you want her listed as the
it didn't look
absent.
like not, it, if I saw it right, not all alternates are always listed under absent.
I
so-
tried to.
Okay, whichever way that alternates go, I think she should go.
Move we accept the minutes of October 10th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the accepting the October 10th minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Staying.
Opposed?
Oh, one abstention.
Yeah, I wasn't here.
Okay.
401.
Meeting.
Next, we have October 24th. Anybody want to make a motion about the October 24th minutes?
I'll move that we accept them.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of accepting the October 24th minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Staying.
Okay. November 14th.
I have one edit here.
Move we accept the November 14th, 2024 minutes.
Second.
Discussion?
On line 214, I wrote, the note, others would fall into place. I'd like to expand that to say others would fall into place over the next year or two.
Could you repeat that one more?
Yep, right now, line 214, there's the phrase, others would fall into place.
Yeah.
I think it should read, others would fall into place over the next year or two.
Between place and based?
I don't, I just have the phrase like out of context in my notes. So line 214 should say others would fall into place somewhere in a sentence. And I just want to add, others would fall into place over the next year or two, and then kind of pick up where it leaves anyway.
Next year or two, comma. based on the questionnaire, or the state may mandate something as well.
All in favor of accepting the November 14th minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 abstention. December 12th.
Move we accept December 12th's minutes.
Second.
Discussion?
One edit. And I'll preface this, it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but I think you know how I'm trying to just be like ultra precise here. On the line, I think it's line 61, I actually didn't note it correctly. It currently says, given that Mr. Westcott is approaching the board for discussion and not a decision requiring a formal vote, planning board members granted Mr. Fillmore permission to be part of the discussion. I think it is more precisely after Vice Chairman Fillmore's explanation that Mr. Westcott is approaching the board for discussion and not a decision requiring a vote. No planning board member requested that Vice Chairman Fillmore step down from the discussion. And the distinction I'm trying to make there, to be clear, is that, as written, it is speculating as to why it says
Right.
everybody made this decision because of this, when that's probably why. And so just again, trying to be very precise, you made the statement, and it was an action and a reaction, and like no speculation as to why.
Do you have that, Naomi?
I'm gonna have to grab it off YouTube, or she will.
I can
So that's that whole section, 59 to 63?
yes. Just from the word given to the word discussion, which is one sentence, it's replacing one sentence with another.
The last sentence, essentially. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of December 12th, 2024 as amended?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Now,
That's fine.
no, 1 abstention, Ray abstained. Yeah. I've also got the January 9th minutes. However, before we even try to accept those, I'd like to make a comment. There was a lot of public input during that meeting, and none of it is listed in the minutes. So I think we might want to ask the minute taker to briefly describe some of the public comment that happened in there as well. Because some of that public comment was basis for the decisions we made,
As far as like the
as far as what,
fact-based, here's a reason I don't support the
Right.
solar project,
Right.
for instance.
right, right.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We ask a lot for context, at the Board of Selectmen level for, hey, we really don't need transcripts.
No, I'm not asking for
Yeah,
transcripts.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just
And
asking
so I
for
think
a
that's why-
synopsis of the public
Yeah, I
comment.
think that's why it ended up where it is now, though she has been really great in the past about public comment being a bit more verbose.
Yeah, we don't need word for word
Yeah.
public comment, that's not what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah.
But there was a lot of public comment, and I think it ought to be somehow reflected on minutes.
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah,
Can I add in 4 edits otherwise?
yeah,
Unless, good.
Line 54, 55, it says they were concerned about waiving the wetland buffer. and since I brought it up, at the time, I want to include in the minutes, they were concerned about the lack of communication during development of the article, comma, waiving the wetland buffer, since it was just putting that on the front of the list. 73 is kind of a typo. It says, after extensive discussion, a motion was made by Frank Bolton, made motion. So just after extensive discussion, Frank Bolton made a motion. 73, 162. And I guess this kind of goes to your point. It's written whether the amendment was necessary given existing state laws, and I tried to capture one of the other thoughts, and I had edited that to whether the amendment was necessary or would be legal given existing state laws, because there was a public comment saying like, are you even allowed to do this? Because the RSA doesn't give you the authority to do this. And finally, 169, I wanted to,
What was, no, number for the last one?
162. It says whether the amendment was necessary given existing state laws, that's as written. And I wanted to edit that so it says whether the amendment was necessary or would be legal given existing state laws. So adding that phrase, or would be legal, since that was brought up in public comment. My final proposed edit is 169 would be a new, kind of in the list of things we talked about. I wrote, the board also discussed starting the zoning amendment process earlier in 2025, possibly as early as April or May.
Number 169?
Yeah.
Just adding on to the
Repeat it
end
one
there.
more time?
Oh, added on to the end?
Board
Yep,
discussed
adding,
starting the amendment.
the board also discussed starting the zoning amendment process earlier in 2025, possibly as early as April or May.
67.
That's all I had.
So these plus other.
So the 19 minutes will be discussed at the next meeting,
Right. Put that
which
on the
should be,
agenda, the
which should be,
January 9th meeting minutes for the next,
So, yeah,
you gotta put the January 9th meeting minutes for the next agenda.
One other thing. Now's a good time.
Sure.
Came up at the last selectmen's meeting, Chief Rourke he asked for a grant, or there's actually an ongoing, continued public hearing that we'll pick up again next meeting about a hazard mitigation plan, or updating that.
I saw that.
And one of the questions that came out of the public comment was, did the last plan, which was only a few years ago, 2018, was that taken into account in any subdivisions since that was put in place? And none of us had the answer. So I said I would ask at this meeting. Or, and if nothing else, like, if we, so maybe put it another way, if we do go through with this grant and update the plan, will the planning board going forward take an updated plan into account in when subdivisions
I
are
don't think-
allowed or not?
I don't think the planning board took the old plan into account, to my knowledge. I mean,
We're trying to decide, is it worth it?
yeah, I know, I get it.
so.
It's,
is
in the
there-
last, I'm kind of with you on this. Some of these grants, I'm trying to be careful what I say here because of obvious reasons. I think our it's not anything to do with the town, but it's a couple of organizations self-funding themselves by applying for and getting these grants to justify their existence. And some of them have merit, some don't. This is almost one of those ones that once you come up with this emergency management plan, the town has not changed a lot in 10 years. What kind of changes could it possibly need?
It was surprising to hear. So there are two separate things. There's the emergency management plan, and then there's the hazard mitigation plan. So this is for the hazard mitigation plan, which was updated just, 2018. Like, how much has really changed
Right.
versus the emergency management, which was like more than 20 years ago?
For a long time.
Yeah, it's been a bit longer. Okay, that's a bit more justifiable.
Mhm.
I have to laugh because we're considering a grant for this, and we can't get a grant for
Yeah, I know.
master plan.
Well,
But but then on the other hand, I hear what he said about it could affect
yeah,
funding that we get in other,
yeah. The two
Yep.
main
Places,
ones
so-
are, if, it should allow for other grants, okay, those same problems, some are good, some are bad, but if you can't get any of them, okay. And the other one, he said if we don't have it in place and a disaster, my interpretation was like if FEMA decided there was a disaster or not,
Mhm.
and we didn't have one, then they would not
we
reimburse us for
wouldn't,
anything,
right.
which, okay.
We don't want to close that door. You never know what could happen.
So these plans presently posted someplace
Online.
under which,
I'm looking at it under the fire department, I thought I put it under a couple different places.
Okay.
It's in the blue tabs, if you go to the fire rescue page,
yep,
in the blue tab, it says, hazard mitigation 2018, there's 152 pages to it. Talks about how on page 9, starts about the incorporation into town plan, I didn't read it, but I'm just reading.
But the short answer is I don't believe the planning board took that in regard for
Which,
anything.
I wouldn't fault anybody for that. I think it's another one where like suddenly it's happening over there. How does the planning board even know about it?
Right.
But, okay, at least we're talking about this for an update. If there is an update, we're supposed to have a committee and meetings and come up with all this stuff. If we do all that and we say, hey, planning board, we have this new hazard mitigation plan, is the planning board going to start taking that into account? It'd be nice if we put the effort in. But, it's also hard to answer that question until you see it.
Unless we see it, right?
and is the emergency management plan someplace too?
Do we have an emergency management director now?
Yeah, I don't know that I posted that one.
Okay.
Who's the emergency management director?
Chief Rourke.
Chief Rourke.
Okay, he stepped into it when,
Yeah, he's got one, I don't have it posted here because I never had an electronic one, he's got a hard copy, but, I mean, we could probably make one and scan it and put it out.
But that's
Yeah.
the one that's actively being updated.
That's the one currently being
Yeah,
updated
you
now.
guys date for that?
Yeah, it doesn't, all I see is the hazard mitigation one, the other one is that maps being updated, NAPS.
So, we've talked in general about the relationship with CIP with the schools. How much did the school coordinate with fire or police or whatever during that big ice storm in 2014, and back then?
it was, 2000 and,
I don't,
So we had a member of our church who was on the,
13?
no, he was the janitor at the school. And he was part of the team that set up the gym to be ready for housing people who didn't have heat. And to my knowledge, most people, unless they knew the janitor, didn't know it was even happening.
I heard a similar thing at the, more recently than that there was a,
So they
That
have,
would be part of that emergency management plan.
so they have the resources at the school to provide that, but I'm not sure if the community was aware of it. And then secondly, I would say that our community wouldn't pursue that because they're good Yankees and are over-prepared to begin with,
yeah, true.
to be honest.
I've never left my house for,
No,
No.
we're worried
Natural
about your
emergency.
pipes freezing and then,
right,
you know,
Was it,
pretty much self-sustained, you know, they can.
Right.
Right.
I
Tough it
mean,
out.
we had that recent section where there was a run on the gas stations, our gas stations were out of fuel. And so you had to go to Goffstown, huh?
That was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, even, yeah, well, so,
Because I pulled in, the guys that said, no gas, I go, I don't need gas, I need diesel.
Yeah,
It's like,
Yep,
yeah,
that's right.
so,
what's that?
I mean, that comes back, so this comes back to our underlying issue of communications, that we need to be more forthright with. You know, if this mitigation plan is supposed to be part of our sphere of influence, or even the emergency management plan,
Yeah, I think
why are we not on the loop?
I'm going out on a, I guess, it's not like maybe you have it in front of you, but I'm going out on a limb. It was more like when a subdivision is planned, the plan, and the hazard mitigation plan says there shall be, I'm trying to make something up on the fly, but like, there shall be a fire hydrant every other house.
Oh, yeah, we've
You
been,
know,
we've
I'm making
done
something
that.
up.
yeah, that's all in zoning, that's all.
We've
I
done
don't know,
that
I'm trying to think of
concerning,
example that would be there, and I'm
a
not-
cistern,
Yeah, water
you
supply,
know, so
water
when we,
supply is part of the emergency management plan, you know, that,
right,
because they need water to
Cisterns.
put the fires out. So that's all part of the subdivision
Yep.
requirements.
Really, it's,
I guess I thought it was when we hand, so when a subdivision comes in, there's 7 plans that go out to conservation.
yeah,
Fire, DPW, police, everybody, and
Yep.
I asked them to look at it and return comments. And we get some back, we don't get some back.
that's
So
true,
that's kind of trying.
It's usually, most of the time,
Proactive with communication.
right,
most
yeah.
of the time you get them back from the fire department. if it's a
It would be nice to get
subdivision.
an answer back regardless, whether they say no comment or something, just something, you know?
reviewed on this date.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
A lot
that
of
there-
times
at
we
least
hear
there's
just
part of the
crickets.
record that they've been notified.
So I could see something like that
You know,
with,
we did one
you know,
for
a
Citizen,
tornado
one
rips through
one
town.
conservation,
It
one
probably
did
hasn't
fire,
happened in
DPW,
100 years,
Mhm.
but if it does and it hits the right spot,
Well, I mean, you look at, we had an event with a snowstorm a couple of years ago. It was during election, they couldn't get the generators to work at the school. I mean, if that had been some emergency and used that for shelter, they were out of luck. They had to get a portable from the fire department, and it only did, you know, a quarter of the job.
called Homeland Security, and they suggested fire chief, so I got ahold of the fire
Yep.
chief, and I go over back to the school, pick it up on his way down.
Yep. Oh,
yeah, so I could see there are some scenarios that are not that far-fetched for
No.
some sort of
You know,
emergency
major
action
snow
plan.
event or another ice storm, which is not far-fetched. I mean, we,
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah,
went-
last year.
So do we,
Yep.
did we see anything in the news when the tornado went through Northwood
yeah,
that they were ready, X, Y, and Z?
They were,
That, yeah, I don't think they had a report to say, oh, it's a good thing we were ready for this.
yeah.
And
no, they
nobody
went-
was ready
it
for
hit
it.
Northwood,
You know,
Deerfield,
you-
you know,
so
all the way
you
through that belt,
have that-
Epsom.
Understanding what our readiness is, we do what we have to do.
Yeah. You might have a 200-page document that nobody remembers when
Yeah,
the
or,
tornado
or
hits.
even, yeah, or even,
Or 10 minutes before it's gonna hit, you know,
Yeah.
everybody's busy doing other things.
Well, I will take that feedback back to the continued public hearing on Monday.
And we have a voluntary merger,
you guys, I scanned it all for you.
yep. I didn't print it out, I'm looking on my phone.
I have the map,
Merging 2 lots on Reservoir Drive,
yeah,
right across from the beach.
the entrance is his part.
Yep.
And they're still combined, only gonna be 1.4 acres.
Yeah, I know, it's a small lots over there.
The house sits on point four,
yeah.
the lot in the back as well, so it's one pointless.
Move we approve.
Second.
All in favor of the
Aye.
approving the voluntary
Aye.
merger?
Aye. Once they pay their $15.
So pass 5-0.
Yes.
Move we adjourn.
No, I have wait a minute, I have something under other business. I have a couple things under other business. The first one is I think Salem, you owe Bruce an apology for the last meeting where you attacked him in the public meeting, and I think that was inappropriate, unethical, and just downright rude. To sit there, turn around and accuse him of having a conflict of interest where I look at it this way, people who live in glass houses should not throw stones. And I think you can take that the way you want to, but somebody was sitting in the crowd here that you also have a conflict of interest with. So I think that you owe him an apology for coming after him like that for something you didn't even have facts on. And that is dead wrong, no matter which way you cut
I
it.
will not be doing that. I was following up on a question that was asked.
You turned around and went after him about something that you accused him of having a conflict and being involved with another person in this town.
I asked questions.
You didn't ask a question, you made an
I
accusation, and
asked
that's
if it
wrong.
was true.
That's an accusation. I don't care which way you cut it. That's exactly what it was. And I think it was dead wrong, and I think you owe an apology for that. He has done nothing to take that type of question or anything else from somebody. He has done nothing but serve this town for years, has given of himself voluntarily. And he has been above reproach in everything he does.
Well,
So I think that was uncalled for, and like I said, unethical, if nothing else, because that, you didn't have any facts, and you threw something out in the air.
I disagree with almost all that.
You can disagree with whatever you want, because and the other part of this, before I finish that, is that this is my last meeting, because if everything works well, as of the 3rd of February, I will no longer be a resident of the town of Ware. In some ways, I'm happy, in other ways, I'm not. And I'm gonna be disappointed that I'm not gonna be sitting with this board, the members that are here as regular members and have been. I've been here for 8 years on this board, and I think everybody here has done a great job for this town and will continue to do that. And as far as whether or not you wanna take it back or not, in the old country where I come from, I got a saying for you, Pug Mahone. That's all I got to say, thank you.
Okay, you said you had two?
That was the second one. The last part of it was, as I told you. Now we'll entertain Pastor Bill's motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.